After Operation Crossroads came Operation Sandstone in 1948.
The whole ship is gone.
This test was the first to occur at Enowetak Atoll and also featured a new high-yield record with...
Hey guys, Loud Guys! Today we are going to watch the evolution of nuclear bombs. So we recently saw a video about true scale of nuclear bombs, and that was horrifying because just to imagine the true scale of and what the technology have gone into, because we Indians just thought, okay, nuclear bombs, and we just always compared it to Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, and that was also very terrifying. But now seeing that those bombs are babies now there are SAR bomba and those kind of bombs that can just destroy an entire state if you compare it with India, so that is scary.
Definitely. And of course I really don't like idea of this nuclear bombs. It's like one or two bombs are so risky for the whole planet. Like they are making in the thousands of quantity. Like this is like they're crazy. It's kind of competition is going on.
Yes. So let's watch this
video.
We are starting our timeline back in 1945 with the first atomic test, the Trinity test. This test occurred on July 16th, 1945 at 5:29 a.m. local time at what was then the White Sands Proving Ground, just 40 miles southeast of Sapporo,
I have seen
New
Oppenheimer.
Mexico. This was an atmospheric test with a blast yield of about 25 kilotons of TNT. The height of the mushroom cloud reached over 38,000 feet. The Trinity test was a culmination of the top-secret Manhattan Project. The device itself looked like a metal sphere with wires attached to it, and it was referred to as the Gadget. This was also the first bomb to utilize the implosion plutonium design. Now obviously, the Trinity test was the largest atomic bomb ever detonated, so it is indeed our first record holder. Less than a month later, on August 6th, the first use of an atomic bomb during wartime occurred over Hiroshima, Japan. The atomic bomb named Little Boy exploded with a yield of about 16 kilotons, all in all taking the lives of somewhere between 80 and 140,000 individuals. The Little Boy atomic bomb design was the first gun-type fission weapon, and the first atomic bomb to only utilize uranium-235. Only a few days later, on August 9th, the city of Nagasaki would also be struck with an atomic bomb, taking the lives of 40 to 80,000 people. It is the last atomic bomb to ever be used during wartime. The bomb used over Nagasaki utilized the Mark III or Fat Man design, which was an implosion plutonium device based off of the first atomic bomb during the Trinity test. The Mark III Fat Man design was the first bulk-produced atomic bomb, with 120 built. On September 2nd, 1945, World War II would come to an end, and surprisingly, the next nuclear bomb test wouldn't occur until almost a year later in the summer of 1946 with Operation Crossroads. The actual first post-war atomic bomb detonation was Crossroads Able, which was also nicknamed Gilda. This occurred on June 30th, 1946, and utilized the Fat Man Mark III atomic weapon design. The blast yield was about 23 kilotons, and it was detonated about 600 feet above the water, 3.5 miles away from Bikini Atoll. Bikini Atoll is part of the Pacific Proving Grounds, one of several test sites that we will be discussing today. The second test of the Crossroads series was Baker, also about 23 kilotons. The Baker test was the first underwater atomic bomb, and the footage of the blast has become absolutely iconic. Many famous atomic bomb photos are of the Baker test.
Why they are doing this?
Oh,
what's the purpose?
There is memes on this test. Wow.
The bomb itself was about 90 feet underwater, attached to the USS LSM-60. The USS LSM-60 is this boat right here. No piece from the LSM-60 was ever recovered. Since this test was done underwater, the blinding light that you usually see from an atomic weapon cannot be seen. After Operation Crossroads came Operation Sandstone in 1948. The whole ship is gone. This test was the first to occur at Enowetak Atoll and also featured a new high-yield record with sandstone yoke, which produced a yield of 49 kilotons on April 30th, 1946. So we have a new bomb to put on the list. Operation Sandstone was the first to be carried out by the Atomic Energy Commission, and their purpose was to test out a new bomb design. This would all lead to the development of the Mark IV nuclear bomb, the first mass-produced bomb with 550 made. 1945 to 1948 was kind of the golden age for the United States and their atomic testing. No other country had atomic bombs. They really had nothing to worry about. They were just trying different things, blowing up ships because they were the sole nuclear power.
Then came
But all that would change in 1949. In 1949, the Soviet Union became the second country to successfully create an atomic explosion, and they would do so with RDS-1. RDS-1, aka First Lightning, or as the Americans refer to it, Joe 1, exploded on August 29, 1949 with a yield of 21 kilotons. This test was conducted at a remote test site in Kazakh SSR. The bomb design was very similar, one might say identical, to the Fat Man design, thanks to some Soviet espionage. The event would mark the beginning of the Cold War, a war that would last all the way up into the 90s. Many families in both the Soviet Union and the United States during the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s thought that maybe, tomorrow won't come and they'll just be obliterated in the middle of the night.
Someday
it's
a
pretty
blast.
scary. 1950, though, was a nice, relaxing year, as there were no atomic tests in 1950. However, 1951 would mark the first atomic test to occur over the continual United States since Trinity. Operation Ranger was a series of 5 bombs, and they were the first to be tested at the Nevada test site, specifically Area 5. The smallest test was Able, with only a 1 kiloton yield. The largest was 22 kilotons. Going back out to Enowetak Atoll, at the Pacific Proving Grounds, we have another new
Operation
major
Greenhouse
atomic
George.
milestone. The first atomic bomb
1951.
with a yield of
But so
over
regular.
100 kilotons. In fact, make that over 200 kilotons. The test series Greenhouse had a specific test known as George that had an estimated yield of 225 kilotons. That's already way larger than the Trinity test, and we're not even close to how big it gets.
Wow.
This test was conducted on May 8th, 1951, and was meant to test out a theoretical thermonuclear design, something we'll get to soon. Definitely a new record holder. So obviously we have 2 different test sites. We have the Nevada test site, NTS, and we have the Pacific Proving Grounds, which is part of the Marshall Islands. And you'll notice that the large, huge atomic bombs were all tested out at the Pacific Proving Grounds, and all the smaller 20 kiloton tests
Why?
occurred at the Nevada test site. One would assume that would be for safety reasons. They didn't want massive 220 kiloton explosions over the continual United States, in case there's some drift of whatever. So yeah, why not the middle of the Pacific? Towards the end of 1951, a new test series at the Nevada test site known as Operation Buster Jangle would be the first to feature armed soldiers. Perhaps you have seen the iconic footage of soldiers in trenches jumping out and walking towards a mushroom cloud. Definitely
It's like
creepy
a
vibes
cloud
from this
monster.
clip. Also during Operation Buster Jangle,
It's like
the
Burj
test
Khalifa.
Uncle was the first that was partially
nuclear bomb.
underground. So we had the USSR and the
That is
USA
too much.
as the sole nuclear powers, all the way through 1951. However, we have a new country entering the Atomic Superpowers Club in 1952 with the United Kingdom and Operation Hurricane. Operation Hurricane was conducted at Montebello Islands in
Hurricane,
Western
I think we have
Australia
heard about
on
this.
October 2nd and had a yield of 25 kilotons. There were now 3 nuclear powers, but only a month later, the US would be entering the second generation, a new tier of nuclear weapons, the first thermonuclear device. So what the heck is that? Well, a thermonuclear bomb, also referred to as a hydrogen bomb or H-bomb,
Hydrogen.
utilizes the power of fusion rather than fission. Just know that this is a whole new level of bomb.
Like, I don't know the
We don't
difference
talk about
between
kilotons
fusion.
when we talk about thermonuclear bombs. We talk about megatons. 1 megaton is 1,000 kilotons.
Megatons.
The
1,000
first
kilotons.
successful thermonuclear test came on November 1st, 1952 with Operation Ivy Test Mike. Ivy Mike was detonated over Enowetak Atoll and had an estimated blast yield of 10 megatons. 10 megatons. 10,000 times
One
larger than that
megaton,
1
there are like
kiloton
1,000
explosion we
tons,
talked about
right?
earlier.
Yeah.
Definitely our new record
1,000
holder. But
kilotons.
pure fission
Kilotons,
bombs
yeah.
weren't done yet. In fact, the largest U.S. fission bomb ever detonated occurred a couple weeks later on November 16th with Ivy King. This Gen 1 pure fission bomb had a yield of 500 kilotons. The Soviets were quick to join the second generation. of
It was just
thermonuclear
back and
weapons.
forth.
Less than a year later, on August 12th, 1953,
Previous one was
they conducted
51, right?
RDS-6,
No,
also known as
2 years.
Joe 4 here in the U.S. However, the blast yield wasn't very
Oh my
impressive
God.
for a second
Lava.
generation atomic bomb, as it only had a blast yield of 400 kilotons, still easily enough to destroy a city. Going back out to the Nevada test site, we have the first tactical nuclear warhead shot from a cannon, aka our first atomic artillery device. This was a 280 millimeter artillery-fired atomic projectile. This was part of Operation Upshot Not Hole, and the shot
Upshot.
itself was Grapple, which occurred on May 25th, 1953. Similar to Operation Buster Jangle, Upshot Not Hole involved over 21,000 soldiers. This test again came with some pretty iconic footage. textbook mushroom cloud right here.
Oh.
A year later, on March 1st,
Year
1954, we have a new high-yield
This was
blast
so
record
dangerous
with
time to live
Operation
in.
Castle Test Bravo.
Every year
Castle
there is a
Bravo had an
test.
estimated blast yield of
destroying Earth.
15 megatons. Absolutely insane. And it was actually quite surprising to have such a high blast yield because they only expected somewhere between 7 and 8 megatons. Unfortunately, due to this high blast yield and an unpredictable weather pattern, the fallout from Castle Bravo actually spread over the Marshall Islands and caused over 90 injuries.
90
and unfortunately
injuries.
would take the life of a radio man on a Japanese ship known as Fifth Lucky Dragon. The controversies behind this test, as well as other tests over the Pacific Proving Grounds, was actually the inspiration behind Godzilla. Speaking of Godzilla and pop culture,
Godzilla.
perhaps you are familiar with the Call of Duty map Nuketown. Well, that's inspired by the next operation on
I
our
played that
timeline,
game.
Operation
But not
Teapot.
this part.
Operation Teapot had a shot named Apple II that occurred on May 5th, 1955.
Oh, so they
Apple
put
II
in
was intended to test
statues
various building construction
to see
types
what will
and
happen to
atomic
people.
blasts. All the tests from Apple II were actually made into a documentary made by the Federal Civil Defense Agency called Operation
my
Q, and it was released to the public. You know, to give them an idea of what it would be like.
See, first it is the
Definitely an
shockwave.
iconic test.
And
The
then-
next test actually occurred 500 miles off the coast of San Diego, California
1955.
with Operation Wigwam. This was the first deep water test, and it was meant to research how
water test.
vulnerable submarines
Like they
are
do
to
on the,
underwater
in the, inside
nuclear
the water
blasts.
Yeah.
or on the
The
ground.
blast
Inside the
itself is
ocean.
about 30 kilotons at
Yeah,
a depth
ocean.
of 2,000 feet. So we talked about the first Soviet thermonuclear bomb, RDS-6, earlier. Well, now we come to the first true Soviet thermonuclear bomb, the Soviets' first bomb in the megatons. RDS-37 had 1.6 megatons and was tested on November 22nd, 1955.
They used to watch it like it
was
is some
highly inspired
achievement.
by the U.S.'s Castle Bravo test. Unfortunately, 2 people were killed in this atomic test.
Two
A
people were
soldier in a
killed.
trench below, and a little girl who was in a building over 40
Oh
miles
my
away.
God.
Check out this footage from a town 45 miles away. This is one of my
45
favorite
miles
pieces
away.
of atomic footage because it kind of gives you like a real world example of what it would be like to be in a situation like this.
Like, what was that girl's mistake?
It just looks so eerie off in the
My
distance.
God.
And then several minutes later, the blast
Wait.
wave finally catches up to you. We are now moving forward to 1957, back in the United States with the controversial Operation
Plum
Plumb Bob.
Bob.
Can't quite say that.
It's literally
Operation Plum
bomb.
PB is notable for having the largest nuclear weapon ever tested over the continual
Oh,
U.S.
it's
with the
full of,
shot
like,
hood. This
heat.
was at 74 kilotons and occurred on July 5th, 1957. Also with Operation PB, we have the first fully underground test with the shot Rainier, which was on September 19th. The bomb was
Fully
only
underground.
1.7 kilotons, but it was still enough to be detected by seismologists all around the world. We have a third
all
country
around the
joining
world.
the Thermonuclear Club with the United Kingdom on
Grapple X.
November 8th, 1957. The test Grapple X was conducted over Christmas Island. The blast
Christmas
yield was
Island.
1.8 megatons, which I guess is spelled differently in UK English. However, their largest yield ever was from Grapple Y, which occurred on April 28th, 1958, and had an estimated yield of 3
Looks like a
megatons.
black hole,
After
you know.
this
Wow.
test, the Brits and the Americans actually joined forces with the 1958
Finally.
US-UK Mutual Defense Agreement. This allowed the British to test their atomic weapons at the Nevada test site,
Oh.
which they did 24
I
times.
thought they would
It's
stop.
time to go up to the very first high atmospheric test, which
Hardtack.
came with Operation Hardtack 1 Shot Teague at 76.8 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And this was with a massive 3.8 megaton atomic bomb.
Cold War was
Technically, this
very
is
hot.
upper atmosphere. It's not a true space atomic test. But that would come with Operation Argus and Argus 1, conducted 200 kilometers above the Earth's surface. But this only had
So
a
now
yield
they're
of
doing it
1.7
above the Earth's
kilotons.
surface.
Towards the end of
Below the
1958,
Earth's surface.
we
They're
entered
not-
On the
a
Earth's
limited
surface.
test
Nothing,
ban
they've
treaty
left
between the
nothing.
Inside my
USSR
stomach.
and the USA. This occurred between 1958
That
and
big.
1961. Do you know who
Might be.
didn't participate in the limited test ban treaty? Well, that would be France, who tested their first atomic bomb on February 13th, 1960.
Not even
with
France.
Operation
Not
Gerboy Bleu.
Not even in France.
This was done over in French
Yes, they
Algeria.
need empty
It
spaces.
had a yield of 70 kilotons. So, of course, we did have that limited test ban treaty that we were talking about earlier. That was about to end, and the Soviet Union really wanted to flex on just the world. And they would do so on October 30th, 1961,
Bomba.
with the massive Tsar Bomba, which had an estimated magnitude of 52 to 60 megatons. Truly insane. In fact, the bomb itself was rated for 100 megatons. This is the largest atomic bomb ever detonated. So it is the final member on our list. Here's what it looks like compared to the Trinity test.
Oh!
I mean, absolutely mind-boggling.
Destroying.
This was way up here on this long island above the Soviet Union. Following the massive Tsar Bomba, the U.S. conducted the very first all-underground test with Operation Nougat, which occurred between 1961 and 1962. This test would be a precursor to what would become the norm in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The first atomic handheld rocket launcher would also come in 1962. This little handheld rocket launcher was called the Davy Crockett. Also with Operation Sunbeam came the smallest nuclear bomb ever with Little Feller 1, which occurred on July 17th.
This looks very small now.
This was also the last atomic bomb atmospheric test over the continual U.S. Back out in the ocean, we go to the first ICBM test, and that was Frigate Bird of Operation Dominic on May 6, 1962. This was the first and only ICBM test with an active warhead. A pretty massive warhead too, as it had a yield of 700 kilotons. Finally, we come to Operation Fishbowl, which had the largest atomic bomb ever detonated in outer space. The test, Starship Prime, had 1.4 megatons, and it exploded over 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Also with Operation Fishbowl came the final U.S. atmospheric atomic test. This was a test tightrope, and it was conducted on November 4th, 1962. In 1963, everything with atomic testing would change with the Partial Test Ban Treaty. This prohibited any signing nation from testing atomic bombs except for those conducted underground. There was one notable nation that did not sign this treaty, and that is, of course, China, who conducted their first test on October 16th, 1964. Their first test was titled 596.
Even China entered into this.
Later, they would conduct their first thermonuclear test, with test number 6 that occurred on June 17th, 1967. Following the Limited Test Ban Treaty, the U.S. conducted Operation Storax, which actually looked into finding non-war uses for atomic bombs. So perhaps,
could
you use an atomic bomb for
using
mining
it for electricity, everything.
Creating a large hole in the ground, which is exactly what they did with the test Sedan. Sedan is by far the largest crater at the Nevada test site. The Russians did something very similar and created a large crater themselves. However, theirs actually filled up with water and turned into a lake.
Oh, they turned into a lake.
Wow. So the 60s and 70s and 80s were kind of a lot of nothing, just a lot of underground tests. There were a few notable tests that we should discuss though. On November 6, 1971, Operation Grommet Test Kanakin was the largest underground nuclear explosion ever at 5 megatons. Another event worth mentioning was the very last atmospheric test ever, at least to this day in 2023. And that was from China on October 16, 1980. Another notable operation was the first joint Soviet-U.S. test with Operation Touchstone in 1988. And finally, the last U.S. test was Shot Divider of Operation Julian on September 23rd, 1992. After this test, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty would go in effect, and this would ban all atomic tests from all the signing nations.
Wow.
Here's a list of every nation who has tested an atomic
But India and Pakistan did afterwards,
1978,
and
the last time they tested one. It's possible that China may have conducted
last
an
test
atomic
1988.
And Pakistan in 1983.
Although it has not been confirmed. And that's a little sketch. So yeah, atomic bombs, they're scary.
This video should also be shown to people like what that world was, because I always remember reading it like it was a cold war between US and Russia, and they both were not fighting, but there was still mental fight going on and things were going on, and they used to threaten each other, but that's it. But I never got to know that they were just continuously testing bigger bombs and bombs and bombs, and that's how they were threatening each other, because this was just like one mistake from anyone, and they could have thrown in the bigger bomb, and then the world would have ended.
Definitely, there's a huge risk, and I thought it's just like when I grow up, like I often used to listen on the news channels that they are just warning, like we'll throw this, we'll start the war. But it is not from now. It is so old. Like they are like keep on experimenting on the things, and you know, I have one question that they are experimenting like under the ocean and doing the things. It is like harmful for the fishes and other, you know.
Yes, of course.
Definitely. Like how do they do that? This is scary.
They do it, but you see on above the ground, the shockwaves were able to like throw away the houses 40 miles away. So
and
of
they're
course,
going higher and higher. Like what is their purpose? Like to destroy everything, to finish everything.
but the good thing is now the race is very in a stable mode, and now they are like, okay, they respect each other and everybody respects each other, and nobody is going all at it. So that is a good thing, that this world has been left behind. So what do you guys think about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. So do like, share and
Subscribe.
bye.